Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Waiting for Esther to get on, and we're going to start together. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Tell me if I'm clear and if you can hear me. I'm going to wait 2 minutes. Hi, everybody. Tell me if you can hear me and if I'm clear. Can you hear me? Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. Just waiting for Esther to get on, and we could start right away. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Hi, everybody. Am I clear? Excellent. Thank you. Okay, just waiting for Esther to join us, and then we could start. Looking forward to speaking about a lot of different things. Hi, everybody. Hey. You're welcome, Panina. We're going to try the best that we can. Okay, we're still waiting for Esther. She's not on yet. I'm going to start this live talking about facing a new reality, things that we are all struggling with, including therapists. You're not alone. And just waiting for Esther to hop on, and then we could start this together. Hi, Esther. Hi.
Hi. Okay. I have to get my phone
Excellent.
charger.
No problem.
So that's why I'm a couple minutes
Okay.
late.
How are you? Okay,
I'm so
just waiting for
beautiful.
everyone to get on. Thank you, Esther. Waiting for everyone to get on. And I think, am I clear? I can hear you. Can
You're
you hear
totally
me?
clear. I hear you.
Okay,
Totally.
excellent. Because
Yeah.
I'm sometimes when I put on earphones, I find that I speak louder than whatever. Okay. So we're very excited to do this together. We want to speak about, several things about what's been going on, facing the new reality that we're living in today, and of course, bringing a lot of tools of strength and hope. And I think the main thing is, Esther, is that we want to come on here like regular people. We are therapists, but also just like everyone else. Everyone has been affected in light to what's going on, including ourselves, and we want to speak about this humbly.
I'm happy you're saying that because I know sometimes people, I've even had a couple of friends reach out to me recently and they're just like, oh, what wisdom do you have? And like we spoke about earlier, I'm a human being first, like we all are, right? And yeah, we want to talk about like our human experience of this, and then obviously skills that we have as human beings, and also having to be therapists, how we can actually be help
Yes.
in some way. Yeah.
Yes. It keeps freezing? Really? Someone's saying that we keep freezing? But
Should we look
why?
at Biggie Dance and see if it softens up? Wait,
Say again.
I'm joking. Let's see. Let's ask again.
Okay, because it's funny. You're clear to me and I'm clear to you.
Maybe we're just clear to
So
each other. Are we still freezing? Full and free. Are we still freezing? Better now. Oh, better.
better.
Okay.
Okay, good. Let us know if it happens again, so we should be able to do something about it. Okay, so basically, hi everybody again. We want to speak about different things facing our new reality that we're in today, the raw, the real. I love how Esther put it, and of course, a string of hope, which we all need, including ourselves. And we're coming on here as human beings that happen to be therapists too. So of course, we could speak about different tools and different things that we teach other people and that we help ourselves through this process. Let's have this conversation. So Esther, where should we start?
Being human. What does
Okay.
that mean? Yeah.
Okay. So why don't you start with telling us, and I can do that too, of like what's going on, where we're at, what's happening, how we're coping, even in light of everything that's been going on.
Um, Today I actually did this training. I posted about it from Pat Ogden, and she's the founder of Sensory Motor Psychotherapy. And I was like looking to hear skills that I actually know some of them, but I always have more to learn. And I think I was hoping for some kind of like reassurance or some kind of like silver bullet. And then she says, and she's an elderly lady, and there were some other experts on, and she says, guys, like none of us have the answer. None of us have something easy to say. And I remember for a moment, I was just like devastated. Like, what do you mean there isn't an answer? Like, the
You have
smartest,
to have the answers. Like, I need help. You have to help me with this.
somebody needs to give us an answer, right? So like, I guess because you're talking about the humanity, like and one of the other people who joined said like, every one of us has a child part that's up right now, where we all have a young part that's like, there is no expert, there's no specialist, there's no silver bullet that's basically saying, oh, this is it, this is the concoction, this is the formula, it's this amount of minutes of mindfulness and this amount of protein shakes. So the human piece, I guess I could say for me, is noticing my very humanity in this, which means it's a new reality for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that we could have predicted. If you ask any of us, what were we expecting? This is definitely not something. So I guess I could speak for myself. And then a part of me almost like was like, do I want to continue watching this? And it was like, no, but yes, because this is part of exactly what every single person is facing, including myself. And so I think what it looks at is just like my own very like, it's like everything has been wiped and there's like a whole needing to recalibrate, and there's shock and there's hope and there's fear and yeah. So how we've been coping. I mean, I'm curious what it's been like for you, Esther, if you want to share, and then we could talk about coping.
First of all, I love what you said about we're all searching for answers. Like, many of us and many of our clients are hooking on to us and they're terrified, and they, like, I'll go to the therapist, I'll go to the doctor. Like, I want to answer. I want someone to just tell me, like, what do I do? What should I do with myself? And we don't have answers. Doctors don't have answers. They have no idea, what to do in this crisis. And we don't either have answers. But what we can do is we could use tools and we could use different things that have helped us along the way and that we have helped others and understand what's going on with us. And a huge part is just validating and reassurance, validating and reassurance. And I know for myself, it's been very, very scary. Uncertainty is just the most terrifying thing. Many of us hold on to this illusion that we have control. And, how many people do you know that know what's going to happen in a month? And, oh, in 2 months, I'm doing this. And in 3 months, I'm doing that. And here we are. And I want to speak for myself. I don't know what's going to be tomorrow. So that's very scary. And that's very, very terrifying to everybody. So, for us, it's been a struggle. It's been a hard week. We've all been home. We've all been, in our quarantine or whatever you want to call it, not being able to go out. Children are home from school. Yeah, we all feel it. And, it's not just that we all feel it. We all feel it in different ways. And for each person, this might look different. And that's something that I want to speak about too, is how really it shows up differently for every single person. So for example, my husband could be reactive or feel whatever it is that's going on in one way, and I could feel like it's going on in a different way, and my child could be experiencing something completely different, and being mindful of that. So yes, it's been hard. And sometimes I got messages from people, oh my gosh, Esther, like even friends, like help, say something, do something. I don't know what to tell you. I could tell you what I'm trying to do for myself. I could tell you what has been working or has not been working, but I don't have answers. And I believe that nobody really does. So, just normalizing and validating that you're normal. And I love this line, but we're all having normal responses to an abnormal situation.
Yeah. Absolutely. It is abnormal. And I think that what you're saying is about like expecting the not having answers. I wonder if it's almost like there's a part of us that wants answers, and it's kind of like what if, and this is going to sound like very simplistic, but what if we shifted away from like the part that's seeking for an answer? Because there isn't an answer. There is an answer. There is a big answer that's going to come. But, you know, sometimes I say to clients or even to myself, like, sometimes there's an answer, but it feels like the answer is going to come and it's taking way, way, way too long to wait for that answer. And that answer is slowly unfolding. But right in this moment, and in each of our experiences, like you're saying, Esther, for each of us, it is so different how we're experiencing this worldwide change, but also how we're experiencing it on a personal level. Like each of us, like you said, you, your husband, your child, we're all being impacted differently, dependent on, right, our own personal history with anxiety, with trauma. We might have some emotional trauma or neglect or whatever it is, or relationship issues that kind of were sitting at bay, and suddenly there's a huge change or an awareness of how out of control or lack of control we have, and suddenly we're like spinning. So we're all experiencing different things. Different people go to a more controlling way of behaving. People go to a more passive way, panic. All of that is normal, and exactly what you're saying. It's like valid for any of us to have whatever kind of ways that we're dealing with whatever is going on. And you're right, there isn't a simple answer. And I think one of the things is like, how do we shift away from seeking from that answer or knowing that that part is there, but still being able to engage with what we do have some kind of autonomy over. Like, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but kind of like we live in this world, like life is a matter, if there's life, then there's death, right? If there's strength, then there's weakness. If there's health, then there's sickness. And those are realities that are there, and we know that. But we're just not exquisitely attuned and aware of every single piece of what's going on a daily basis. Thank goodness, because we would walk around exhausted. Did you see that meme? It's like, there was a meme that someone sent me, like, this is Anne, she's 31, she's been homeschooling her kids for 5 days, and she looks like she's like 97.
100, yeah.
It's like the exhausted look. But I think that so what's happening is now we are, of course, for good reason, and of course we need to take precautionary measures, but I think the emotional, like, exquisite attunement could get tiring. And then it's like, how do we realize that we don't have answers, but how do we still stay connected to like all the other parts of ourselves and the caring for ourselves at this time?
So I want to point out something you just said, Esther, about people that struggle with anxiety, depression, or any form of trauma.
Yeah.
And I see here that someone wrote, could you please give some practical tips to lower anxiety? So anyone that's predisposed to anxiety, depression, or has exhibited any form of trauma, this could be exacerbating their symptoms. Where they're feeling so much more edgy, so much more jumpy. I know for myself, I have exhibited childhood trauma, and for me, it's very interesting. I even noticed, like, I was talking to my husband one day, and he's like, Esther, why are you shaking? And I was literally sitting like this, and I was like, you know, like, and he's like, are you okay? And I was like, what? I didn't even realize, like, I just needed to, like, my body was reacting, and I just needed to like move back and forth, or, you know, like, to help myself. So just remember that if you're someone that has, you know, that struggles with anxiety or depression, and maybe it has been better, you know, for a long time, or exhibited any form of trauma, it's going to be much stronger right now. Okay, so that's, you're normal. You're normal. Exactly. Yeah, I'm sorry. So I want to go back to what you were saying.
Well, I like what you were saying actually about being normal. Like, I think that sometimes, I know, like, I even will have, like, I'll talk to a friend and be like, hey, how's this for you? And one person, friend or neighbor, might be like, what are you talking about? Oh yeah, whatever. And then someone else might be like, oh my goodness, the world's coming to an end. And somebody else is like, oh yay, finally, blah, blah, blah. Or, oh my goodness, you know? And I think to the piece that you're speaking to, Esther, I think one of the things that any of us experience, if we've been through trauma, or we have anxiety, or if we've been through any kind of childhood trauma, or struggle with anxiety, depression, different kinds of issues, is that there's this feeling of being misunderstood. So you're saying right here, kind of like, I guess we're saying together that we understand you, the person who is feeling like a bit more shaky, you who's feeling a bit more understood, or a bit more depressed, or you're having a hard time getting out of bed, or a bit more anxious. This is so much bigger than what's going on in the world. It's normal.
Correct. And if your symptoms feel worse, just know, like, you know, people are like, oh my God, I think I'm just going to turn crazy, or whatever. You know, you're having a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. Whatever symptoms that you may have had may be worse right now, and that's okay. That's normal. It doesn't
mean that you're going to stay like this forever.
It's forever.
Like a long minute, but yeah, it's not like you backslid, and it's not like, well, your treatment or work that you've done is gone. It just means that your body's letting you know, help. And you're saying, yeah, this is a big deal. Yeah, I like that you said that. You're not going crazy. No.
Right, right. And like I said, like I feel like if there's two words that we could like write, actually I'm going to write them here, is validation. Okay. Validation. I'm just
Yeah.
going to write
Yeah.
validated.
Yeah.
I think that's so important.
Yes.
Validation and just reassurance to know that, like, you know, we're going to get through this. We don't know how. We might not have answers. We can help you with different tools and different things that we work on and help our clients, but that doesn't mean that that's the answer. That's the cure and the know-all, because we don't know.
But things
Yeah.
are actually going to, things are like today as we speak, things are changing. I think sometimes people panic of like things are really hard or how long is it going to take? And I think something to keep in mind is that as long as we are alive, like we're living organisms and the world is moving, things are always changing. And that might not give some relief in this moment, but change means that there's always like things are not staying the way that they are today in this moment forever. You know, they might get a little bit harder, but then there's also going to be a shift. That's just how the world goes, and there's going to be relief. So I think that's an important piece. Like you're saying, we don't have the specific answer, but we do know that things are changing. And
just like, you know, the idea of like, just like things come up, right?
Yep.
Just like you
Yep.
throw something up, it's eventually going to come down.
Of course.
And like you said, it might be a very long hour. We don't know. But in the process, let's talk about, you know, what can we do? What can we tap in? And this is not saying that we have the answers, but saying that what could we do with our current situation and where we're at, being that every single person is going to react differently.
Yeah.
What could we tap into? What resources can we hold on to? So I know many people spoke about this, and I think it's important to say this again. If you know that you are anxious and you struggle with different things, don't watch the news. Please don't watch the news. You know, just don't watch the news. And if you have a spouse or a sibling or whatever it is that they're like, you know, holding their phone the whole time and they're like, oh my God, you know what? They just said this on the chat and they just said that, right? Or did you see that? Like, amazing. I'm happy that, you know, this is working for you, but it's really not working for me. And please don't show it to me. I do not want to see it.
Right.
I know for myself, I really, really have been trying to shy away from this. Anytime my husband was like, oh, I was like, what, you're reading something? Just please don't. Is it important for me to know? Is it something, you know, for my health, for my hygiene? If it's not, I don't want to know. Don't share it with me.
I think at this point, we all know the basics of, like, we're not even going through that because you have it anywhere else. But like what we need to do, I think if there's any other update that we need to know about, we'll know about. But there's a lot of, like, I remember going onto Yahoo. I have an old Yahoo account. And like literally every time I went and I'm like, what, are they switching the headlines every 2 hours? It was like another thing. And if I was actually reading it, I'm like, okay, you just panicked me for no reason, or you panicked me for a reason that I don't think exists. Or maybe it's valid, but I kind of knew this already. And giving my body more anxiety or my mind more panic is just going to make me a less present mother, a lot less regulated human being, and being able to actually like face today. So I like what you're saying about boundaries around the news and information that we see or don't see. I think we all have enough information. Of course, if there's something relevant to you, then you could stay informed. But there's a real limit on what's healthy and what's becomes really damaging.
And I want to add that, you know, even for someone that doesn't struggle with anxiety, it can literally cause the person to have anxiety just from hearing the news and all these things. Like, you don't have to have that, you know, struggle with it or whatever. It's automatic that, you know, we just get nervous. Like you said, you know, our whole body starts reacting, our whole nervous system gets activated. And that's normal, because think of it, it's like a nonstop flow of information that's coming and coming and coming at you. And it's happening really fast. Yeah. And it happens so sudden, you know, and I feel like that's the definition of trauma, when something happens too fast, too soon for your nervous system to be able to handle. And that's kind of what's slowly happening. And how can we take care of ourselves as this happens? So don't listen to the news. I think another really good idea is having a partner to be accountable with. Like, if you do find yourself, you know, that like, I'm just going to check this one, you know, little thing, or I'm just going to, you know, whatever, because I'm anxious, having someone check in with you, like, hi, Esther, what's up? I'm just checking in with you. Are you okay? You know, do you need to talk? Can I message you? Could you message me? I think that's also really important to have an accountability.
It's almost like accountability to your mental health at this point in time. I know it sounds funny, and people sometimes think like, oh, my therapist. If you are in therapy and you're doing virtual therapy, that's amazing. At the same time, like, your therapist can help you process. This was actually earlier in this training that I mentioned. They were talking about processing like traumas or anxieties or fears and working with powerlessness. And there's ways to work with that. And that could be focused on in trauma work and in therapy work or in anxiety work or any kind of work. But in terms of mental health, like what Esther, you're talking about, like, we have millions of hours, well, hundreds of hours where we have to care for ourselves outside of the therapy office, outside of the therapy time. And like you're saying, Esther, yeah, big piece is like that social connection or someone in your life, or, you know, you could appoint someone, or have that, you know, those other forms of really like bonds that are keeping you steady and strong, because we really need each other at this time. And although like social isolation, right, what was that piece of like social isolation? Personal isolation, or what was it?
Yeah, like I forgot the saying, but something like social isolation, but connection. Like, even though we're far apart, we're connected in some other form or whatever.
Yeah, like we need that. Yeah.
You know, and when you say this, what comes to light to me is this week I noticed that when I was going to bed, I wasn't going to bed at night. I just, you know, whatever. And my husband wasn't either. And I looked at him and I'm like, what's going on? Like, why aren't you going to sleep? And he's like, Esther, why aren't you going to sleep? And I'm like, I tell you the truth, I'm literally afraid to go to sleep. So just having that accountability and having someone else to share that information with. And somehow when we do that, it really calms our nervous system down. The fact that we shared it with someone else, like I told the person the truth, as stupid as it sounds, it doesn't matter. I was kind of like embarrassed to say that. And my husband was like, oh yeah, I'm also kind of nervous to go to sleep because we don't know what's going to be tomorrow.
Yeah.
So being able to share that with each other, whether it's a friend, whether it's a neighbor, whether it's a partner, whatever, I don't care, you know, that I'm feeling afraid and this is what's coming up for me, really helps validate, and it really takes the intensity of whatever you're feeling like 10 notches down. I know for myself, like as soon as the cat was out of the bag and we shared it with each other, it was like, okay, I'm going to go to sleep now. Could you check in on me? Okay.
Right. I think something that's important to know is like every single one of us is afraid. And if anyone says that they're not, or they're an expert, like, yes, of course, we'll talk about tapping into spirituality and having a bigger sense of meaning and all of that. But the human experience is one of, we can know and we could be knowledgeable, and also we can know that there is fear that's a very real part of life. And that doesn't mean that we're weak, and it doesn't mean that we're not going to be okay, and doesn't mean that we're not fully okay in the moment. It means that it's an emotional experience of energy, like you're saying, Esther, and it needs to be expressed. So there's a real power in turning to someone, or even, right, that's part of the whole concept of therapy, but even specifically in our lives is like sharing almost like these unspoken words, right? That's what we were talking about tonight, is that people sometimes have this unspoken or unidentified experience, and suddenly they're feeling anxious, or they're not feeling anxious, or they don't know what they're feeling, but they just feel like their minds are spinning and they're yelling at their kids, and they're, you know, or they're on their phone the whole day or shouting at their husbands, right? But yeah, fear, it's amazing that you're able to do that with your husband, because being able to say, I'm afraid, is huge, right? And kind of giving that some airtime. And then that part knows, okay, well, we're noticing that there's like a fearful part. It's a real fear. We're all afraid right now. And then it sounds like it was able to settle a little bit. So really giving these really, really big emotions lots of space, because I would almost say it's healthy to notice them and express them. I think the people who aren't expressing it or aren't tapping into it, you know, might coming out in other ways. So, yeah.
And, you know, when you say that, or the whole idea of like that some people are afraid and some people are not afraid, I think of a fire. You know, like a fire burning.
Yeah.
And there are two people they have like different experiences where one person's going to be like, oh my God, there's a fire. And they're going to like dive into the fire, even if it means that they're going to get burnt. And they're going to just like do anything and everything they can to shut the fire. And then you have those that just like run for their lives. Like, there's a fire. Okay, bye-bye. You know, and I believe that when this comes up for us, many people have that response of, oh, I'm not having it. Oh, it's fine. There's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing to worry about. It's fine. Let me just run for my life. Versus the other people that just obsess about, oh my gosh, I'm so scared. And I saw this message and I saw this thing and I don't know what to do. And, you know, all of that, where they're obsessing and just like kind of just trying to shut that fire. You know, each one is just a, you know, different reaction that people have, but knowing where it's coming from. So if you're that person that's like, what's wrong with her? Every time I speak to her, she's like, don't worry. What do you mean worry? I can't sleep at night. So just know that her coping mechanism is to run away, or to be like, I can't deal with this. It's nothing. Let's make believe that like nothing's happening.
Right. Right. There's people who go to like this like minimalization, or they go to this like exaggeration, and it's kind of knowing where you land. And just because someone is minimalizing and denying or being irresponsible, actually, it doesn't mean that what you're doing is invalid. And people who exaggerate don't either have to jump on their horse. It's finding the balance.
Right.
Did you see the question? Is there a question that popped up?
I'm looking, let's see. Hold on.
How to manage with 3 mental diagnoses. Well, I don't know if you just hopped on, but Esther and I were talking about how a time like this, just acknowledging and validating and saying like that, there's a lot of changes, and that when you do have any kind of, I don't like calling it diagnoses. I want to honor your diagnoses, but like we all have stuff. It's just a matter of where we land on the spectrum. But yeah, if you have some kind of mental health diagnosis,
I call it symptoms.
I always call it symptoms. Like
right?
symptoms,
A symptom. If you have any kind of symptom, like, for example, physically you have fever or you have, whatever it is, right? Okay.
So if you have symptoms, because symptoms are basically just a way of your body and mind saying that you need some help. Anyway, so if you have different mental health struggles or diagnoses or symptoms, yeah, so I would say at this point in time, it's kind of like we want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to care for yourself. Know that you might be extra sensitive and that you might have reactions or experiences that are hyper, like hyperactive or a bit stronger and louder, and that's normal, that's expected, and there's ways to work with it. But just kind of expect that instead of being shocked by it. I'm like, oh my God, oh no, I just had another this or another that. It's like, yeah, it's gonna be rocky, it's gonna be wavy, the ocean right now, it will.
Yeah. And I want to add that, I said, I really look at this time, like for people that are struggling, which is all of us, that it's really, if you notice, it comes in waves, right? Where like, there are parts of the day where you're like, oh my God, we're all going to die. We're all going to die. I'm so scared. And then it's like, we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. And it like comes in waves. It comes in waves. So just know that that's normal, right? If you're in that funk all day, like where you can't breathe and you're freaking out, that's not going to work very well. So it's okay if you feel like, okay, I got more strength from listening to this, or I reached out to someone else and I feel better right now. And then 10 minutes later, you see something or hear something, you're like, so that's normal. It's normal.
That's really normal. Yeah. I would even say, like, Esther, just for a second, if there is someone who feels like they are constantly in a panic, I'm not here to, I know there's a lot of initiatives in terms of mental health. Like if you do need a therapist, it would be a good time to reach out or even get someone for like, I have some colleagues and I know some resources that are offering like very, very reduced rates or from different organizations. Wow. Definitely get in touch with a mental health practitioner. And some people might even need medication for short term. I'm not pushing any of those, but I do want to say if someone feels like
it's an option.
Yeah, there's always way more support than what we're talking about, but we're just saying. But Esther, yeah, I think also for some people, there was like, I think Rebecca from Project Proactive posted something and I loved it. And it said like myth versus reality. And it was like, a myth is like if you have certain symptoms, like you're crying or you're sad, or you're emotional or you're panicky, that means you have some kind of major diagnoses, versus reality is every single person right now is going to have lots of symptoms, lots of diagnoses, because this is what our body's processing, right? So like one moment of like, oh, okay, I think I'll be fine. Or even if I'm not, I'll take appropriate steps to get the right kind of care. And then, 7.5 minutes later or 14 minutes later, it's like, oh my God, I'm just about to dive into this big roller coaster, Yeah.
Okay, I'm just looking here. That is it normal for someone to not, 1 minute, I'm sorry. Is it normal, 1 minute, for someone to not be seeing their therapist in person? Absolutely. There are many people that are not seeing the therapist in person now, especially if we're home, quarantined.
I don't know any therapists who I respect who are actually seeing their clients in person. At this point
or doing virtually or on the phone. There are many different ways that we can do that. How about
it can be hard, and it can be really, 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 really hard because it's a huge human piece. So,
and I want to add that some people love it. Some people happen to enjoy. Some people like for example, when they're on the phone, they love closing their eyes and going inside and really focusing on what's going on versus looking at the other person. I understand that there's a lot of body movement that we see when we're seeing a client, but there is some value to when you like close your eyes and you really go inside as the person speaking to you.
Yeah, I think also sometimes virtually allows different dynamics to come up. I think people might not choose it, but I've seen how sometimes it's actually been a great segue to healing. So, yeah. Yeah.
I want to speak about, okay, so we were middle of talking about tools, like different little tools to manage our stressors that are going on, which are all very, very normal. And then I thought it was nice, Esther, to go into spirituality, because I believe that when we tap into that, it really makes a difference for us. It really fills that fear void. You know, they say the opposite of fear is faith.
Yes.
And like, how can I tap into that? And where do I go? And what do I do to get there?
Do I answer that question, or should I continue with that? I actually, did you see, wait, do you want to, sorry. Okay. Sorry about that.
Whoops.
Yeah.
I lost you. What did you say? I'm sorry.
Am I here?
No, if you need to finish saying something, Esther, finish saying what you were saying and then we'll continue.
No, I'm actually fine. I just want to make sure that my phone doesn't keep like knocking me off. Okay, go on.
Okay. No, so did you want to finish saying something before we go on to spirituality?
No, I'm so excited that we're going into that topic.
Okay. I'm finding, one of the things that we all having to do, being that we're all in our homes, we can't go anywhere. We have limited access to many things. I know that we do have the internet, we do have social media. There's something about just having to sit with ourselves and having to reflect. And, I was telling someone recently, I'm like, I feel like God just like put us all into timeout. Like he just wanted something from us. And he's like, you know what? Enough of the rat race. You're all in timeout now. Now it's your time to just like sit and reflect and think and, there's something about it that we have to go inside of ourselves and we have to pause. And for many people, that's very scary. For many people, having to sit with themselves is the most terrifying thing. I could tell you from someone, being a trauma survivor myself, we're talking, many years ago, I was always on the run. I was terrified to be with myself. I was just like the quiet. I mean, today that's like, I love it. And I crave for it. But at the time where I was just so uncomfortable in my body with my feelings, I couldn't handle it. And there are many, many people that have a hard time with that have a hard time sitting with themselves and reflecting and being there. And it's almost like, I know you're uncomfortable, but like, this is what we're going to do now. And I find that with that comes along, somebody wrote, oh my gosh, it's terrifying. It can be terrifying for many people that have a difficult time being with themselves and that have to run all the time. But there's something that comes along with that, like an inner appreciation. I notice like even now Shabbos, my husband davened at home. I never heard my husband sit and just daven the whole davening at home. There was a certain appreciation that suddenly like we noticed and we had to sit with that like, oh wow, I never realized that, or I never noticed this, or you have no idea how many times, even with over, Shabbos, I kept saying, oh my goodness, I'm so grateful for this, and I'm so grateful for that. And I'm like, well, what's happening? And it was just because I was forced to sit and notice, and I was forced to sit with myself. So I think just speaking about that appreciation, and also the fear of being with yourself and what to do about that to help yourself be with you. Because if you don't be with you, it's hard to be with anybody.
Right. Can I speak to the terror piece for just a second? To the person who posted it, I want to thank you. What happens is, and Esther, thank you so much for sharing about your journey and your strength. And really, I think there's a beautiful piece about faith and spirituality and connecting to God. And I think there's also a piece of like when it's terrifying for us to be with ourselves. When it's terrifying for us to be with ourselves and slow down, it could be like a number of things. I'm just going to kind of put it out there. Like sometimes it's just like our bodies are so used to being on the run, like it's a societal norm. Sometimes when we're living in survival from our younger years, or even things recently that happened over like a compilation of years, there's a dynamic in our marriage, or there's a dynamic from childhood trauma, or there's whatever it is, then our bodies might just be primed to run. Why? Because there's body flashbacks or body memories that might come up when we stop. It doesn't have to mean that there's a memory or an image. It could just even mean this uncomfortable sense in your body. You're just like, I can't be, or I can't just be present. And so I just want to acknowledge that might happen. Like people sometimes say like, oh, when things get quiet, or it's kind of sometimes the reason we reach for our phones. It's not always because we want to be terrible parents or we want to be not present people. Sometimes it's like the discomfort or the fear of what would it be like if I'm present in this moment. But Esther, so I think obviously a lot of that is acknowledging and processing through, and the healing work, which you can do in therapy, but also even in your own work as well, or adjunctive, is yes, somebody wrote, could it be nature? Of course there could be nature and habit that we pick up our phone, but but I think the feeling of terror, it wouldn't come with terror, it would just be a little irritability. I think if we're feeling terrified or really uncomfortable, then it's more than just habit. Like I wouldn't feel terrified if I had a bad habit of drinking 7 cups of coffee a day, and then suddenly I'm like, oh, I have to go down, you know? So it's different. If there's that terror, I just want to speak to it if people experience it. But usually it's some kind of like body experience. And then obviously, like Esther, you're talking about, there's a healing experience and being able to allow the body to re-experience being in a not scary kind of way. Because it could be that like dad used to get angry, or there was some kind of trauma or violation, or just fear or unknown or whatever it is, right? Powerlessness. And the body's having a memory to that. So, and as we get more oriented to our lives, our body can actually experience being in a calm way. So I think, Esther, what you're talking about is there's a huge piece of being, right? You know how I said, I'm like, if this is so hard, and at the same time, it's almost beautiful that I'm like getting to connect to my child. I'm getting to be more present. I know someone else mentioned, like, her kid asked her a question and she was like, I actually answered him in like the kind of answer I'd want to give, instead of just like being on the rush of like, oh, everybody else needs to get to dinner or bath time or school, you know? So there are very beautiful moments, in the connection. I think there's also a piece, we'll answer that question. We'll also answer, I think there's beautiful moments in that. And I wonder, Esther, if what you're talking about is in the being, it's sometimes we're connecting to like a soulful part of ourselves. So it's kind of, because you said kind of like the being present and the being quiet and connecting to spirituality, right? Is that what you were talking about?
Mm-hmm.
That they're connected in some kind of way when we are able to be, and we're getting in touch with kind of like our soul or our spirit or our higher power. And there's obviously what you said about God, like God is kind of sending us a message. And I don't know that any of us would be engaged in like the simplicity, where people are having weddings with less fanciness. And I don't know, I'm a simplistic person, so I value that. I'm like, everyone should do that forever. But I think there are some values. I do want to just say to people who are in abusive situations or in toxic environments, my heart goes out for you. Being in a quarantine is the hardest thing in the world. I just need to acknowledge that it's not all like sunshine and butterflies for people. And there are resources to reach out, obviously safely. I guess we're talking in a more broad sense of people and the experience of like the slowing down when we kind of zoom out of like the panic, but just the realities that we each are facing with. Yeah.
And I want to add to what you're saying, Esther, that if anyone has been in a former relationship growing up in an abusive home or anything like that, and they're still having those body memories and they're still having those flashbacks, kind of reiterating what you said before, being alone can be very, very scary.
Yes.
You know, even though no one's harming you or no one's, doing anything in the present moment, those memories, whatever it is, like, oh, the shoe is going to drop, something's going to happen, like, be busy, talk, do something. And suddenly it's just quiet, and there's just a lot of reflection and a lot of downtime that could be very, very triggering and scary for some people.
Yeah. So being alone, right? The not having that either interaction, even if you just go to like Starbucks or if you go to Barnes and Nobles or whatever it is, right? That you would do, even if it's not physical interaction, emotional interaction, but there's a piece of just social interaction. I thank you for bringing that up. I think the piece of feeling alone and disconnected, if you were abused or if there was some kind of emotional neglect or feeling misunderstood, the being alone, the being forced to be alone could be, right, like what you're saying, very triggering and traumatizing. And the feeling of fear could feel even bigger than the reality. Like there is a fearful reality, but your fear might feel deeper and bigger. And then that's something to look at and to know it's normal to be triggered, to feel triggered by it. And also you can work with that fear so that it doesn't like overpower you, because sometimes that fear can overpower and almost become this like big monster that's like, but yeah, just acknowledging that is a trigger.
And also just sitting with the feelings, sometimes like, I'm so uncomfortable.
Yes. Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm really uncomfortable, or like that, like I shared with you, like I was talking to my husband and I'm like shaking and he's like, you're shaking. And I'm like, yeah, wow, I didn't even notice, like it was like an automatic reaction. Exactly. Yeah. And I was like, wow, like I just noticing it, can also be scary for some, but it's always good to acknowledge that. Now, just going back to the spirituality piece about, sitting with ourselves, like you said, the whole idea of having smaller weddings and, everyone is being affected in a different way. There are people that their bar mitzvahs, were canceled, weddings were, done with like limited amounts of people. We went through to be able to get to this moment. But there is some value to it, and there's something beautiful about that. And I want to add more things to the spirituality piece, where there have been so many movements going on. Now that people are, having downtime, and yes, unfortunately, there are many people that are getting, sick and being affected by this virus. There are Shmiras Halashon things. There's like stop the spread of like, I don't know, not nice social media things that you don't want to think, sharing different people just like popping up. There was like this Corona Mora that just like popped up out of nowhere. She's a certified teacher and she's giving people like a million different things to do, sharing creativity. And it really brings a very strong sense of community. And that's something that, we could sometimes get so zoned into the terror and the fear of what's going on. And then there are all these like incredible things that are happening as we're going through this.
Right. Yes, exactly. I think there are the perks of like, even just, I know that I joined a few chats, like there's like in the 5 towns, there's a bunch of people who are doing chesed, kind of going out for like elderly or people who have compromised immune systems, like running errands, picking up things for them, just like a feeling of togetherness. And even the messages, I mean, like the rabbis are sending messages and obviously medical professionals, but I think there's a feeling of like we're being cared for, we're connected, we're all part of a bigger unit, which at the end of the day, from a spiritual standpoint, is such a huge piece of like having a sense of belonging, which is obviously a huge concept in and of itself, because when we feel fearful, or we don't feel understood, then we feel like we don't belong. But I think some of the experience of what's happening, although, right, there's one side of fear and panic, there's also a side of togetherness, of people wanting to protect each other, of looking out for each other, I think the reason I got knocked off a couple of times is because my family has this thing of, we have like a Zoom meeting every night. So that's probably why my family members were calling it. But yeah, I think that's part of it, is like, what are the ways that we can create togetherness, right? It could be family, and if it's not your family, then like friends or people, or what kind of togetherness. I know on my block, we have like a chat of how do we, and like how we could be of help to each other. And there's actually a lot more activity now than there has been in the past. So I do think that they're seeing from that standpoint. And I think I also just want to say out there from a spiritual standpoint, like one of my colleagues said this and I valued it. She said, like, it's okay if also right now you're not feeling so spiritual. It's okay if right now you're feeling like really mad at God. Like, I've been through a lot. I can't believe you're doing this. Or my husband just lost his job. Or like, it's okay. Or my kids are driving up to Wazoo, or these kind of issues are going on, or this is too much for me. Like, you're allowed to have that experience. We're talking about a sense of meaning. Spirituality and being connected to God doesn't always mean that you're like, I love you and I love the world and I love everything that's happening. No, it actually usually means that there are ups and downs, and there's struggles, and there's feeling angry and disconnected, and then processing and feeling more at peace and connected. But just allowing space for the bigger picture in whatever it is that you're experiencing. But faith, and when you are able to tap into that sense of meaning, even if you can't connect to the rhyme and the reason, it is very grounding and stabilizing if you have connection with your higher power, with God, to really speak to that. Yeah.
I also want to add that giving, this is all part of spirituality, but, sometimes when we're frozen in fear and we're stuck and we can't really tap in, like you were saying, giving to someone else will reduce anxiety. Sometimes when we give to someone, we get so much more. So if you want to just like check in with someone or send someone like, something nice or like uplifting, just know that by your giving, you think you're helping that other person, but you're also helping yourself. And I think that that's a very, very spiritual concept of connecting to others, to ourselves, and to something greater than ourselves.
Yeah.
So we have like 50 minutes left, and I want to like kind of like just finish, like kind of like tuck everything in, because I think it's so important to talk about different things. I want to address that right now it was very interesting. I recently heard a rabbi say this, that when a tornado hits, you get ready for the tornado.
Yeah.
You like, knock wood on the windows, you make sure your house has enough water. You're not like, oh, let's sweep up the floor now, because we're going to have a tornado. You're so busy just making sure the foundation of that home doesn't, get knocked over. Right now, we're kind of going through a storm. And all we could do is try to get through that storm. So, I've noticed on the internet, there were people that were trying to make schedules, and they're trying to, be, for the children and for this and for that. We're in a storm now. We're kind of in survival mode. We just want to focus that our house doesn't get knocked over. That's the most important thing right now. And then after the storm is over, that's when we're going to assess the damage. So of course you could be proactive, and you could, like knock wood and make sure that your house is sturdy when the tornado is coming, right? Or as we're going through it, and make sure you have enough water and bread to eat, but that's it. So, for those of us that are trying to survive in a way that it's like, whatever, I still have to go shopping for my kids, and Pesach is coming, and all of that. I understand that, children do tend to feel more safe when there's a rhythm, and like Pesach is coming and the regular things are being done. But when you're in a storm, all you're focusing on is how are we going to get through this storm? After the storm, you'll assess the damage. So just kind of like knowing, what's important, how important is it? Is it really important for me to make myself crazy about this specific thing? My children are watching more screen time now, let's say, than ever. Is that terrible? If it gets us through the storm, it might not be the best thing for once the storm is over. Your kids are going to be like, I want to watch. And you'll be like, no, like you guys watched enough for the last who knows how long. But kind of to just focus on that concept of when you're in survival mode, it's okay. Like not everything is going to be how you want it to be. The same tools that you would normally use may not work for you because you're just trying to get through things. You're trying to get through things.
Yeah. I think even also like to piggyback on what you're saying, to preserve that energy, right? Like I know sometimes like what's happening right now, you're talking about kind of like a storm or a tornado. Like we're in a tornado. Like there's something about like past experiences. There's something about current experiences. Today, right here, right now, we're in a trauma, right? We're in a trauma right here, right now. We are experiencing something where we have a certain sense of perceived control, but also a feeling of powerlessness. And I say that in terms of like, and when we're going through trauma, we get mixed up between, right? If the person goes into like, I'm just going to sweep the floor, and their partner might look at them and be like, what? And that's actually a trauma response where they're trying to have, or like going shopping for Yantif, it's just like, are you serious? Like, what are you doing? Right? So it's kind of like, but it's almost a trauma response, like a dissociated response. And what I want to say, I found it in my own self where it's like, right, I think I was sharing like, oh, I want my child to be in a certain reading level, or I have certain expectations, and then it's just like, okay. And at the same time, like the bigger picture is survival right now, which means we want to reduce any extra layers of PTSD or extra layers of anxiety or any extra layers of whatever. We want to help stay connected, give ourselves a sense of somewhat normalcy, ride through these huge emotions for ourselves, for our children, for our loved ones. And I think we sometimes could get confused between, should I preserve my energy on like the short, like the right now survival, or the aftermath? And I think what you're speaking to, Esther, is like, for right now, we need to be focusing on exactly what's happening right now. Obviously, don't do things that are self-destructive to you or your family, but like if your kid ended up watching a little extra, if you ended up like not going for your run on the treadmill or your weights in the way that you did. I know my whole workout routine is different. I still get movement. I'll put on music and dance like a whatever kind of person because I need movement. But it's okay. And I think there's like the overarching goal is like self-care and health and balance. So I like how you're saying like preserve for the right now, right? The storm. And after that, it's a different kind of energy. But we don't want to mix those two
we'll
up.
assess whatever it is that needs to be done, or like your academic level that you want your child to be on. We'll focus on it after the storm and just focus right now on how to get through it. And
we'll have different resources after the storm. I think sometimes we think like, no, we have to plan. It's like our minds and our bodies and our whole society is going to have different resources. I don't mean financial, because I know there's worries about that, and that might be there. Okay, I just want to acknowledge that. But I think there's something about like emotional and energy resources. We're going to have a different kind of energy as things settle down. So it's a matter of really preserving the energy for right now and then for the long run, in a responsible way. Yeah,
absolutely. I want to just mention something else, is that we also live in a society where we are very uncomfortable with pain. We want pain to be taken away very, very quickly. You know, you're feeling this, there's a drug for that. You're feeling that, there's a drug for that. And, you know, it's scary. There's a lot going on. It's like, I know it's kind of going back to the idea of sitting with ourselves, but sometimes it's sitting with the uncomfortability. It really, really is. And it could get very uncomfortable, especially when you don't have as many distractions as we did have till a short while ago. So, you know, sitting with the uncomfortability, you know, even if it means just crying a little bit, whatever it is that you need to do for yourself to be able to give out whatever it is that you're feeling, just know that it's normal. For
Also
those
that
of you that
our body could handle it. I think sometimes, I know for my own self, I know that like the way I used to carry stress when I was younger is I used to have like different like belly issues, like my belly would hurt. And I know that for me, it was just the way that I was making sense of emotions that I did or didn't have or wasn't aware of. And I think there's a piece, Esther, of like really teaching our bodies, especially if we didn't have these experiences for whatever our reasons, that like our minds and our bodies could tolerate pain. We don't like it. I don't like it. I know I don't like it. And I know when I'm parenting, it's like, yes, I can tell when like you want me to make everything feel much better. And like, of course, none of us should ever inflict pain or make pain worse, but like we can tolerate a lot more pain and discomfort and fear and yuckiness than we would like to, right? When I mean yuckiness,
meaning our bodies could
yeah.
process a lot more than we think it can.
Yes, our bodies, well, what happens is that our bodies could process a lot more and our brains could actually process and tolerate. What happens is our relationship to that is sometimes panic. So all of us might be thinking like, we can't handle this, right? And we go through like, I can handle it, I can't handle it. Your body could survive it. Like what we're going through right now is part of the human experience, okay? The human experience comes with like pandemics, not that they happen all the time, right? There are recessions, not that they happen all the time. There are times of like booming economies. There are times of lots of joy. There's times of lots of safety, and there's times of war, and right? So it's part of the human experience. Did any of us living on this planet choose this? No, but it's a human experience because that's what it means to be human. So I think exactly what I'm saying, Esther, is sometimes we have a part that gets panicky of, could I tolerate it? You can tolerate it. We want to help you tolerate it with obviously as little like scarring or emotional damage as possible. But if you knew like your body and mind can actually tolerate and move through this, if it's really uncomfortable, I think sometimes we don't know or believe or trust that our bodies can and will survive. And even if there are ways that we need support after or during, that's okay. But we have like our brains and bodies are programmed for health and healing. So even as we're going through this trauma, like we're going to be able to bounce back, you know, if we believe in our capacities, we care for ourselves in that way, and we lean into the supports that we need. Yeah.
Yes, and I think that's something that we could finish off with is the idea of support, that your therapist should not be your only support. Yes, I know that you know, if you're having virtual sessions or phone sessions, that's fabulous. And there are some therapists that are really working around the clock because of all the paranoia and fear and chaos that's going on. But support can mean, you know, a sibling, a parent, a neighbor, a friend, anyone that you could reach out to. Support could be just putting a boundary and saying like, if you don't mind, please don't send me these messages.
Yeah.
And, you know, anything really important that I need to know, just let me know. Support can mean, I don't know, help me. What else could we do?
Support could also mean like different kinds of, one second, hold on. Support could also mean different kinds of self-care. So it could kind of be like, I know that I have a friend who said like, she's like, I realized that I work and then I'm home with my family and I haven't really reached out to people. And she really reached out to people like old friendships and was like, I know this is weird, but what's happening right now is that I really need people in my life. So even like thinking about people you've had connections with, or even like less personal connections with, but you feel comfortable with, it's like, hey, this is a lot going on in the world and I want to connect. It could be like a 10-minute stretch of yoga in the morning. It could mean, I know for me, I have like pastels and I'll just do some artwork. Like there's different ways that we need support. Right. And exactly, Esther, actually, you said this earlier and someone just said this, like even the strong person, like we all are needing support right now. There's no such thing as
everybody.
Like, I'm the strongest. Every single person is human and has emotions. And is needing support. But Esther, there were two questions. One, someone wrote, is it normal to want to be with her therapist all the time right now for that feeling of safety? And the other one is someone asked about how do we stay hopeful? So basically, basically, I just want to speak to the part about the therapist, the wish for the therapist. It makes sense that if you have a good connection with your therapist, that you would want to be in her office. for so many hours or with her the whole time right now, that just speaks to the concept of attachment and security, is that sometimes when we have a secure feeling or connection with someone, we just feel safer with people, right? We know that when there are there are different times in our lives or even in history when we have connections, we have someone who loves us, being next to someone that gives us a sense of security could be soothing and reassuring. And of course you wrote like, it's not going to happen. That's okay. But it's normal to have that hope or that wish. I think that speaks to the health in the relationship. I think just channel that relationship, that warmth, that feeling of security, obviously throughout your day and as you move through whatever it is you are doing. And then I guess value that you have that relationship. And
like I said, use other forms of support, not just your therapist. I know you want to move in with your therapist, but you know, at this point, your therapist may also need hand-holding and support and all that. Like, you know, we just shared about All Human. All Human. I cried quite a few times this week, you know, from frustration and what's going to be and all of that. And then being there for other people. That's normal. That's all normal in what we're going through right now. There was something else about
Can we talk about hope? Because someone wrote, how can we stay hopeful at this time?
Okay. We literally have like 4 more minutes left, so let's try to kind of get that in. Hope could be, we could tap into hope in so many different ways. Hope could be, you know, through tapping into a song. I went out today and I was just looking at the flowers that were just popping up. I'm like, the world is going crazy. It's cold outside. You know, everyone was kind of like tied in the house today, and I'm going out and I'm like, wow, like the world is still continuing. The trees are blossoming. The flowers are like, you know, blossoming, and like, wow, this shows that the world, like there's still continuity and there's hope that there's something greater happening here. There's something going on with all the darkness and with all the fear and with everything that's going on. They're all coming out. It's still happening. So it could be tapping into little things that kind of like open our eyes and give us that like, wow, there's something happening here. There's something greater than myself. Hope can also be tapping into all of the things that others are doing selflessly, whether it's giving out masks, whether it's organizations calling nonstop. I mean, I live in a community where the shul already let us know about families that might need more financial support this year than other years because of what's going on. You know, right away, like putting together, you know, the whole, like, you know, who's going to do this and who's going to do that. That should give people a lot of hope that you're not alone and people care about you.
Right. I think for hope, I think we all get different kinds of hope. I love how you're sharing about like the flowers blooming and seeing, you know, people offer support. I know for my personal self, when we all connect to hope differently, I know that I channel, like, there have been different tough times in my life where I think if I looked back and I knew that I would get through, and getting through doesn't mean that like there was a bowl of cherries and it was like, oh la la, right? It's like things that could still be impacting me today. But there's a sense of strength, and there's a sense of like, I mean, I wrote this in a blog I recently wrote, like, can you make a list of the tough times you've been through? And the fact that your minds and bodies, we all have these different kinds of coping skills, right? That help us get through, and they're conscious or unconscious, whatever it is. But I know for me, tapping into like the fact that I've been through different hard times, and no, I didn't expect that 2020 would be a rough year, right? Or a rough phase. But really tapping into like the fact that like there is the like hope is always alive. I would say even, but not even, especially when you don't feel it. The times that I've been strongest in my life, the times that I've seen people in my personal life and my professional life, like who are strong, people who have deep souls, they've all been through something really hard, and none of them, while they were going through it, were like, oh, awesome. Like, I don't think
we're doing this. We're doing this.
Yeah, it wasn't like, it was just more of like, I'm putting one foot in front of the other, and that's the best I can possibly do. And I might do it with I'm bawling tears, or I might do it with a light feeling in my heart, or I might be doing it with a whole jumble of emotions. But my commitment is to put one foot in front of the other. So, and
even if we're crying, and even if we're shaking, that doesn't mean that you're not someone that's tapping into that. That doesn't mean that you're not strong.
No.
I think the strongest people are the ones that can actually shed a tear and can feel something. So that's normal and that's okay. And that should, like, I love what you said, Esther, about taking your other experiences and seeing how you got through it. And you, even though it was so difficult for you, and how at that time you weren't even aware of it, but you put one step in front of the other. And I believe that this is a collective healing. This is like a collective thing that's going on.
Yeah.
None of you are alone. We're all going through this in a
We
very,
are
very,
going
very
through
different
this
way.
together. Yes.
Correct. And even though we have the social distancing, you know, I sometimes close my eyes and just imagine everyone just like from wherever they are, just like holding hands together. Like we're going to get through this. Even if I'm the one that runs away from the fire, you're the one that jumps into the fire. We all have our different responses, but we're really, really all in this together.
Right. So I think just to speak to the faith's beautiful, Esther, we are all in this. And just the hope thing, I think Esther also saying, because I know you said something and I did, I think also allowing people to get curious, like what does hope mean to them? Because hope could feel like a dirty word when you're suffering. And like if
so 19 seconds, 18 seconds.
Wait, are we gonna be kicked off?
Yeah.
Very
finish what you said.
Okay, very briefly, I just think that knowing that hope can mean whatever hope resonates for you, and it's not what hope is for someone else. I think just knowing that dark times, there's always light times as well. It never always